It is Wednesday, September 16, 2020. This is episode number 73, Cash Balance Plan Part 7. What are the costs? This is the 39.6 Facebook Live Finance Show, the show that teaches high earners like yourself how to make your money work for you so you don't have to work for your money. We talk general investing, taxes, real estate syndications, Airbnb, and even the car you drive. We are on part 7 of our cash balance pension series. I can't believe we made it this many episodes just talking about a cash balance plan. I mean, I'm not really that surprised. I could do probably 10 more. But people have actually had some interest, so I'm going to keep going until I feel like we've really completed this topic, because once we stop, I don't know if I'm going to come back and hit it again. All right. If you're out there, you can hear me, you can see me. Tell me where you are coming from. Let me know that everything's working, and we will get the show on the road. Okay. So what are the costs? A cash balance pension plan is not cheap. Okay, this is not a discount brokerage, solo 401k Roth IRA that you can open up with $0. This is the exact opposite of that. You are going to have to pay money to save money, but this can be the most valuable dollars you spend on anything the entire year, because it can open up so much more tax savings. So it drives me a little nuts when people focus so much on cost when the net effective cost to you is negative. For example, if there were a $20 bill for sale at the store and they had it on sale for $5, would you pay $5 for that? Yes. My answer would be, how many of those do you have, and can I buy them all right now? Okay, because it doesn't matter what something costs. What matters is what you get for what you pay, right? The value. Now, certainly you can get quote unquote ripped off on anything you buy, which is why you have to spend a little bit of time and effort and do some research. This is actually one of the areas that I know the least about, because this information is not that readily out there. I probably should do a post, but the problem is I'd have to do a whole bunch of research, try to find a bunch of places, get them to actually quote me prices. It's hard to get people to quote you prices often, because it's such a specialized niche thing that often is kind of like, you're going to hire someone to redo your kitchen. Okay. You go through the whole plan, then they kind of give you a price, and then, they go list everything. But at the end of the day, if you were to ask them to do everything in advance, not knowing where you lived, what zip code you were in, things like that, it's hard just to nail down a price, because this is not like a retail product that's out there for millions of people. This is a super niche product. Okay. And some people might not have that many clients, because it does take a lot of effort to A, find clients, and B, manage those clients. Relative to some other things. I mean, you actually need to have an actuarial analysis. Nowhere else for all of your investing do you need an actuarial analysis to be done every year. It's kind of a mix of having to have a CPA, and an investment advisor. And I mean, there's multiple things, and you can't just invest your money. Okay. So you're going to have to pay money, but here's a great starting point. And so many people come to me who are 1099 employee or 1099 contractors, and they're interested in getting a cash balance plan set up. If you are a 1099, a cash balance plan is so easy because you don't have to do any cross testing with any other employees. It's fantastic. You don't have to give them anything. You're just self-employed. This is one of the biggest advantages of being self-employed. And if you're making mid six figures as a 1099 person and you don't have a cash balance pension, then you want to pay more in tax than you need to. Okay. So first start out at Schwab. This is the cheapest off-the-shelf plan I know of. I'm going to make myself smaller here and take off my title here. So this is the page on Schwab. They call it a personal defined benefit plan. They used to have a ton of information on this, and I feel like they've gotten rid of some of it off their website. But if you go to Charles Schwab, personal defined benefit plan, they have a list of their pricing right here on their page. It says variable fees based on the total number of participants starting at $1,750 for one person. Annual service fees based on the total number of participants starting at $1,750 for one person. Then there's also plan termination fees. And then trade commissions are $0 for online trades. So if you are starting up a new Schwab personal defined benefit plan, if you just have one person, the setup cost is $2,250. If you have just the key employees, like the highly compensated employees or the shareholders who own more than 5% of the company, still just $2,250. And then the third column here is employers with staff. The setup fee is $2,250 for all of them. But the annual service fee is $1,750 for one person, $2,000 if you include key employees, and it says $2,600 if you have 3 participants, or $3,000 if you have 4 or 5 participants. So basically, this is for a small business, solo 1099 person, or a small company with up to 4 other people, up to a maximum of 5. So it costs $2,250 to get it going, and then you're paying $1,750 a year for one person, up to $3,000. Okay, so if you're by yourself, you're paying $4,000 the first year. That is a lot of money to open up an account, right? So Stefan had asked me, what's the minimum I need to put in to make this worth it? So the first thing you need to do is first calculate how much your tax savings or tax deferral would be. All right, so let's pretend you're putting in $4,000. Okay, $4,000 in fees. Now, if you're like at the top tax bracket, you're paying 40%, then you can get to $4,000 in tax very quickly. It could be like $10,000 of contributions could save you $4,000 in tax. But you have to remember that the cost of something, first of all, is tax deductible. Okay, so out of your pocket, it's not as much. But a cost is an unrecoverable cost. You can't get that $4,000 back. Now, if you were to take it as income, you'd be paying tax on it. And it would end up being like, $2,400. So it would be less. But still, if you pay that money, you never get it back. And that tax savings is not a permanent savings, except the Medicare portion. The rest of it is a federal and or state tax deferral. Okay, so you're really just getting a tax arbitrage. You're putting it in at 37, you're going to take it out at like 22, so you get like a 15% spread. Okay, so you don't want to spend so much money that your fee exceeds the spread that you would be getting. All right, so if it's costing you $4,000 and your spread is like, let's say you're planning on a spread of like 15%, then let's say you put in $30,000. Okay, if you put $30,000 in and you're expecting to have a tax arbitrage between your deferral in and your money out of 15%, then you're hoping that you save yourself $4,500. All right, so if your cost is $4,000, okay, that's reasonable. Now you have some extra advantages of having the plan open. You have the asset protection. Okay, you have the complete Medicare tax-free portion, so that saves you money. That's permanent savings. It gives you another tax shelter so that you can have bonds in there that you're not paying ordinary income tax on like you would in a taxable account. So it has a lot of advantages. But having a cash balance plan is not like easy. It requires some time and effort every year to deal with the people who are dealing with this. You have to deal with it, like, for example, with your accountant, with your 401k plan, with HR, with whomever, and then the actuary and the other parties that are involved in this. This is not just open up an account and get started. I mean, a solo 401k even is a kind of a little bit of pain. You still have to fill out a piece of paper at a lot of places. If you go to Fidelity and you open up like a SEP IRA or a solo 401k, you need to fill it out in paper from the best I know and wait a couple days. Now, and that is still relatively easy. This is not that. Okay. So you should be putting in a good chunk of cash. Now, the first year will cost the most because you have to get it set up. Subsequent years, it'll be cheaper. Okay. So maybe you don't need to put 40,000 in, but putting in $40,000 a year is probably, a good amount, at least 30 probably, if you're getting a plan open yourself. If there's a plan already open and you can just join without really paying extra, then it doesn't matter quite as much. But if you're getting started by yourself, you want to be putting a good chunk of cash in. Okay. So $4,000 by yourself and then like $2,000 or so ongoing. That's kind of a good place to start. If you're shopping around, there's a lot of people out there who do these plans for individuals. I don't know who they are because it's just hard to find them. But you should have this price as kind of a comparison. Now, this is like an off-the-shelf plan. I don't know anybody who has one. If you have one, please let me know because I would like to know how it works and how flexible they are with you. It's probably off the shelf. They probably give you basic information and basic numbers, and you just kind of do whatever. They might have a specific, investment choices for you. I don't really know. Or it could be completely self-directed. I don't know. But that's a good place to start price-wise. Now, my company, much, much, much bigger. We have like over 400 shareholders and over 3,000 employees. So this is way more complicated. Okay, so I'm going to show a different screen here. Here's one of the people we had give us quotes called Pinnacle Plan Design. And they actually have some pretty good information out there on the web. They seem like a pretty solid company, but we did not end up going with them. But these Pinnacle Plan Design, these are the actuaries. So these are the people who decide how much money each person can put in. They're the people who do all the cross-testing to find out how much everybody can do each year to make sure everything is in compliance. They design the plan. This is really where all the hard work is. Okay. So they listed with us a base fee of $9,000 plus $100 per partner who is participating in the plan, plus an additional $20 for every single person who has to be included in the plan testing. So that's like all of the employees. Okay. So for example, and on the math here, we had initially estimated 108 people participating. So 108 times $100, 10,800. Okay. Plus the 9,000, that's $19,000. Okay. So it's 108 times 100. Yeah. 10,800. So we are at $19,800. That's just for the participants. Then we have all of the other people who are employees who are not in the plan, and they charge $20 per person there. So that ends up being about another $6,000. I calculated this math wrong. I'm sorry. The math comes out to being, 3,000 times 20, $60,000. Yeah, I did the math right. 60,000 plus 20,000 gets us $80,000. That's a lot of money. If you think about it, like I keep on considering, like, can I become an actuary and do this? Because I could get 5 plans and I could be making $80,000 per plan. I could just do talks like this all the time. I've probably done enough lectures right now to get myself 5 clients this year, right? I could make $400,000 and be an actuary to 5 plans, and that would be it. That's $400K a year. I can do this, I think. Actually, I can't right now, but I'm sure I could learn, right? We went to med school and I'm good with numbers. So 80 grand is a ton of money, but that's just for the actuary. That's just for the person who takes all of your employees' 401k. Basically, you have to give them a spreadsheet of all your employees, their birthdays, how much income they have, and how much they put into their 401k as a contribution, as a deferral, and how much you've given them as an employer. And that way they can calculate all of the cross-testing rules and figure out how much each person can give. It's a lot of work. And it's based on that information and also, and how much is in your pension if you already have a pension and what returns you've gotten on that. So it has to be like redone every year. But that's a lot of money. Granted, this is a gigantic plan, and most plans are not this big, right? There are a lot of people who have small groups. You could have like a 10 partner group, and a 10 partner group with no employees with this company, 10 partners times $100 is 1,000 plus 9 is 10 grand a year. Okay. And if you're putting in on average 100K per person, $1 million and a $10,000 fee, that's awesome. Okay. Now, so that's kind of the range. So you have like $4,000 for one person, or here we have like $80,000 and we have like 100 people. So you're looking at like about $800 per person. We ended up getting a lot more people in. We got around 160 people in the first year. We went with a different company. We went with Kravitz. I have no actual formal affiliations with any of these companies. I probably should, because I'm sure people come to them via me, but it's all good. I really like Kravitz. If you talk to them, tell them Victor sent you. Ken Guidrose was the guy I talked to and worked with last year and continue working with. He's awesome. So we pay 6 figures. Okay. We pay more than the 80,000, but we also have a lot more people than we initially planned on. We got 160 people. So we pay 6 figures a year to Kravitz, but they are amazing. They redid all of our cross testing and found out that we were over contributing more than we needed to the non-highly competent employees to meet cross testing. Like we were paying 7 figures a year that we didn't actually have to pay. So having an awesome actuary can save you a ton of money. And there's also a lot of different ways that they can run the plan with different parameters and give you different options potentially of how the money, like the contribution amounts per person, it can be, you can have different scenarios and you can choose from. Okay. But we're focusing on the cost here, and it can cost a lot of money. You can easily expect to pay about $1,000 per person who's participating in your plan, just kind of a round number. And the more other employees you have, the more it can cost too. Okay. That's just the actuary. Now, your money has to go somewhere, and technically, do you need a portfolio advisor or a financial advisor for the fund? I don't know technically if you do, but I kind of think you do, because you really want to have an ERISA 338 fiduciary advisor on your fund, advising your fund, because you want, if you're the employer, you're the company, you want to minimize all of the liability risk that you possibly can have for having this plan open. So this is one of those mo money, mo problems things, right? You make a bunch of money. You're trying to save a bunch of money in tax. Now you're going to pay a bunch of people to help you save the money in tax, and then pay people to help protect you from protecting other people from tax, right? But so you want to have an ERISA 338 fiduciary advisor, so that if something happens and you have somebody who's participating in the pension and they're not happy, then they can't really, if they sue you, the company, I mean, you have a ERISA 338 fiduciary advisor who is advising the plan, so that everything passes the muster, or whatever, however the phrase is said. It's not like you, somebody who happens to be one of the people on the committee for the plan, is like making the decision for everybody, right? You have an ERISA 338 advisor. Now, I shopped around with all these different companies that people referred me to for the investment side of it. Like managing my own money, I have no problem doing that, right? And this is not as easy. Getting a cash balance plan is not as easy. Just, oh, I'm just going to go to Vanguard. Oh, I'm just going to go to Fidelity. Like they don't even really advertise their pension plans. I didn't even know they both had pension plans until I actually talked to them and asked them, because they're like on the institutional side. They are not on the retail side. The only like discount broker who has a retail pension plan available is Schwab. They're the only one. Honestly, I can't really see them making much money on it, because it's a whole separate program with very few people who participate, right? But when you're at the institutional level, you're bringing in tons of money, 7 figures, then there are things open. So Fidelity Institutional can do a cash balance plan, and Vanguard Institutional can do a cash balance plan. So when I just talking about Fidelity, they are an all-in-one solution. They can do everything. So if you see here on this PowerPoint, you have the actuarial analysis, then you have the advisory fees, and then you have record keeping. Fidelity can do all of that. And we have our 401k at Fidelity. A lot of companies do. And it's really easy. You have like net benefits, their webpage, you log in, you can see all of your retirement accounts. If you have old retirement accounts from residency from Fidelity, you can see them there. We can still see our old Fidelity plans I had from residency and fellowship as well, all there. And Fidelity's book record keeping is excellent, incredible. I love them for their bookkeeping, but they're kind of an all-in-one solution. So you either go with them or you don't go with them. They have their own actuaries and they have their own funds they do, and it's kind of an all or nothing deal. Okay. I don't actually know how much their fees are because we didn't actually end up going with them. But advisory fees on the assets. So you're going to have your money invested somewhere and they're going to charge you money. A lot of places are going to charge you about 0.6%. Okay. About 60 basis points is pretty common because they will often charge you just for the advisory fee, and then they'll charge you for the funds. And then if you look at a lot of places, they have special funds made for pensions. They have these low volatility funds and different things. I'm going to discuss investments in another episode, but a lot of them have these special funds that they have just for cash balance pensions because they're trying to minimize losses and not have too high gains with substantial volatility. They're trying to keep right in like the let's say 3 to 6% range. Okay, which is ideal. But it can be expensive. There are places, a lot of places I talk to where you're well over 1% between your fund, advisory fees, and the actual funds that are invested there. Okay. And that's in addition to the actuarial fees. So let's just pretend you're paying $4,000 at Schwab and you're putting in $40,000. You are already putting 10% of your money just to get the plan open. Luckily, their fees on the assets are dirt cheap, right? Probably 0.1%. But I don't know if they make you pay an advisory fee. It doesn't sound like it. Now, we put in almost $10 million last year. And we paid, let's just use round numbers, $100,000 to our actuary. That's only 1% of the money going in, but that's still 100 basis points, right? So you're looking on the cheap end, paying 1% of your money just to have a cash balance plan. That's before paying any advisory fees. Okay. So it can easily cost you 2% or more, which is why a cash balance plan is like the last thing you do, right? Everything else can be done a lot cheaper. A 401k for a small company, there are really cheap companies out there like Guideline. They're dirt cheap. Not like free, but still cheap. But if you do have a small company and you have a 401k and a cash balance plan, it's often ideal to have it all done at the same place because the cross-testing is done between both. And often it's just a lot easier to have it all done in one place. Not always possible. And sometimes you want to use different pieces for different things, but it can certainly be simpler. Okay. Now I'm going to show you what we paid. So we have, we ended up going, I want to hide these things and they keep showing back up. Hide. Okay. And other way. Okay. So we ended up, I didn't, again, know that Vanguard even had a pension fund, cash balance pension at all because I just didn't really see it because it's on the institutional side. Now, they have their advisory fee schedule listed here. For the first 5 million, they charge you 40 basis points, 0.4 million. Okay, so this is not like Vanguard retail brokerage IRA accounts where it's like self-directed. no fees. You just pay for your expense ratios. You're going to have to pay money here. If you want to have your money held at Vanguard in a pension, you're going to pay for their advisory services. Now, the first 5 million is 40 basis points, 0.4%. But then for the next 45 million, it's only 15 basis points, 0.15%. And for the next 200 million, it's 0.12%. So if you're like a family office and you have 9 figures, and you want to have institutional advisory services, yeah, you can get in with an advisor at like 0.2%, 0.1 something. I mean, if you're just on the retail side, you can get an advisor with them at 0.3%, but that's not the same as having like an institutional advisor. I'm actually really impressed by the service from Vanguard when it comes to their pension. They're pretty responsive to us, and I mean, they'll fly over to us to have a meeting with us. Like, you don't get that as a retail investor, right? Speaking of which, Schwab actually, they were supposed to move here to Westlake, outside in like suburban Dallas this year, because they merged with TD Ameritrade, maybe? I forget. COVID happened, and I haven't heard anything about it. But it would be pretty cool to have your people next door. But at the end of the day, we ended up using Vanguard as our fiduciary, ERISA 338 fiduciary advisor. Okay. And with 10 million in there, it's about, it's the average of 0.4 and 0.15. So that's 0.28%. So we had almost 10 million the first year, but then second year, we're putting in more than that. So we should be at over 20 million this year. And so the cost should be between 15 and 28, around 21%, 0.21% on 20 basis points as an advisory fee. So that's super cheap. And then the funds themselves, expense ratio is about 10 basis points. So we're paying about 30 basis points this year to Vanguard. And then we're paying around 1%, or actually at the end of this year, because we'll be worth at 20 million. If we're paying 100,000, we're only going to be paying 0.5% to our actuary. So that's one of the nice things. The bigger your plan gets, the smaller the costs are relative to the plan. So last year, we were paying like 1.3% to our actuary plus our fiduciary advisor. And for this year, we're going to be closer to half of that because the pool got doubled and our fees have gone down. And so, yeah, we're going to be maybe 0.6%, 0.7% or so for 2020. And then for 2021, it may be closer to 0.5%. So, yeah, we have a big plan. Actually, this year we might get to the 23 million. Depends how much the new participants are putting in. So it's a big plan. And the bigger your plan, obviously, the cheaper it can be per person. Now, we said that there's 3 parts. There is the actuary, there's the fiduciary ERISA 338 advisor. Then you have, actually, you know what, before I say the third part. Okay, the third part is your bookkeeper. But regarding the ERISA 338 advisor, I'm kind of jumping around, I apologize. One of the reasons, so our group allows all the shareholders to participate. And I think any doctors who are not shareholders, but I don't believe we allow anybody who's not a doctor or a shareholder. Part of the reason is, if you allow everybody in your company to participate, which we could do, but one of the issues here I had mentioned about liability risk. If the only people who are participating are people who are in the plan itself, you are less likely to get like sued, because the people who are suing are the owners, right? You're not really an employee in the same respect. So there you also have a little bit less liability risk of the pension, because the only people who are participating in the pension itself are people who actually own it, right? Okay. So then the third thing is the bookkeeper. Now, and I don't think Vanguard actually provides bookkeeping services themselves directly for these funds. I don't think, although maybe I just don't remember. But I think if they did, we would have just used them, but I don't think they do. So you often have to get like a third-party administrator to keep track of all the books, to keep track of all the people whenever they whenever money goes in from the employer, okay, and anytime money gets put into the account, so received into the pension, and then anytime one of the participants of the account, one of the shareholders, one of the people who is part of the plan, anytime they take money out, there has to be, I think, a Form 1098 for that. You get one like when you do a backdoor Roth, you get a 1098, I think, or 1099. 1098 is for loans. You get a 1099, special 1099. I think it's 1099-R. And that money has to go out. You have to keep track of the money going out, money going in. You have to fill out that 1099 for each person who has taken money out of the fund each year and give that to them. And, that's administrative time, effort, cost. Every single form that has to be filled out is another form that could have a mistake, right? And then you have to fix any mistakes. So there's a lot of bookkeeping involved, especially when you have a lot of people in the plan. So then you have to pay for that too. And the cost of that, again, is based on how many people. I don't actually have good numbers for that. But you can easily see how your costs can get above 200 basis points, over 2% very fast between having an actuary, having a fiduciary advisor, and having a bookkeeper. Now, remember, at the end of the day, you're only trying to get like 4 or 5% as safely as you can, right? So if you're paying like 2% in fees, you have to basically be earning 2% above your target. So people hated me when I would grill them on their fees when I talked to the fiduciary advisors or even the non-fiduciary advisors, because I was like, I'm trying to get 4% here, okay? And I'm going to pay you 1%. So really, I need to get to 5%. And so to get to 5%, I actually need to take on a substantially higher amount of risk to get that extra 1%. It's 25% more than the 4, right? 1% doesn't sound like a lot. It's just 1%. But when you're only earning 4%, it's 1/4 of your earnings, right? So it's a lot. And what are you actually getting for that 1%, right? Because you're not necessarily getting like a high return. You're trying to get a steady 4%. And is there some magic sauce that they can do better at 1% than I could get at 0.3%? Like I could do 0.3% in low cost funds and take more risk off the table. I could have more bonds than I would have with the other person, because I don't need to earn as much. I only need to get 4.3 instead of 5. There's a big difference there, actually, that 0.7. If you don't think there's a big difference, look at your savings interest rates, right? You're like at high yield savings, like 0.8% right now, or maybe 0.7%. And last year it was like 1 something. And people are very upset about their low interest rates in their savings accounts. It is so hard to find yield, right? So if I can just take risk off the table and decrease my cost, I can have a higher likelihood of getting to that 4% with the least amount of volatility, just because I took a bunch of stocks off the table. Instead of being like 60-40, I could be a 40-60, for example, and have a lot less risk because I have less equities in the allocation. So ultimately, that's why we had gone with Vanguard, but they're not like an all-in-one solution. It's not easy. A lot of people are like, Victor, just go with Vanguard. Just go with Fidelity. It's so much easier. Yeah, it would be easier just going Fidelity, not necessarily with Vanguard. They don't have like an all-in-one package really for us to do everything. And at the end of the day, we wanted to be able to save as much money in tax as we could without having to pay extra. And after surveying a lot of different plan offerings, we had to go with Kravitz with the best actuarial analysis we could get from anyone, because the difference in contributions was substantial. And a lot of people would think, oh, I can go to an actuary here and go to this actuary, and they're going to come up with the same numbers. They're not going to have the same numbers because there's so many variables. It's kind of like if you have to drive, or you have to get from point A to point B, and point B is like 300 miles away. Okay, like Detroit to Chicago, or I don't know, like Vegas to LA or something like that. I don't know. There's a lot of ways to go, right? You could drive, you could fly, take a helicopter. And if you drove different routes, a lot of ways to get there, right? I don't even know where I was going with all of this. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to get there. So there's different ways that the actuarial analysis can be done. There's so many different plan options, and you have to shop around and talk to different people, see who have experience working with groups your size. I realized after talking to number of people that we were way bigger than their typical client. Even when it came to just having the money with a fiduciary advisor, I talked to some big companies that are like, you would be in our top 10% of all of our clients, or top 10 of all of our clients. And there are a number we talked to where they're like, you would be our biggest client. So just from a liability standpoint, have a pension plan with 8 figures. I didn't want anybody accusing anybody on the committee of like picking people without necessarily a great reason to do that. So we wanted to be working with people who work with our asset size on a regular basis, and people could just work around their portfolio with the portfolio that we chose without anything super special that people aren't going to understand. This portfolio we use is very cut and dry, and I'll cover that in another episode. So cash balance plans are not cheap. You need to be investing every pre-tax dollar available to you already, if you're thinking of getting a plan open. If you already have a plan at your company and it's not going to cost you extra money, then not the same situation. It's already there. You should use it. But this is the last place you should be putting money. It costs more money to run it, and you don't have control of your assets. Fill up all of your other qualified space first. Do this last. But if you do this, the savings are gigantic. It will be a little bit of work every year. It will be a little bit of pain. But there's no one thing you can do each year that can potentially save you more tax than this one thing. Okay, this is way easier than getting rep status, right? All right. That is it for episode number... Oh, we got episode 3 already? Wow, episode 73. I can't believe we've done this many episodes in the past month and a half. I haven't missed a day yet. Again, none of this is legal, financial, tax, anything advice. Please consult with all of your professional advisors, your CPA, your fiduciary financial advisor, any other people with certifications to advise you before making any decisions. This is simply for my entertainment. 39 minutes of my entertainment. Maybe like 5 minutes of yours. Until tomorrow, have a good one.